Hey, what is up guys? David Zhou here, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about a semi-controversial topic, and that is, should you use a zoom or a prime lens? Is there a clear definitive winner? Which one's better? Pros and cons? Let's talk about it. Before I get into it, as frustrating as it might be, the real answer to this question is really gonna be, it depends. So why don't we talk about the strengths of each type of lens? Prime lenses arguably yield more creative results, while zoom lenses typically are more versatile. Prime lenses usually have a wider aperture. Zoom lenses obviously have a range of focal lengths. And finally, prime lenses are typically more compact and lightweight, while zoom lenses offer the ability to pack less for your job or trip. So let's go ahead and dissect that. What am I saying by creative versus versatile? Now, I'm not saying that a zoom lens isn't creative or doesn't yield as creative of visuals. However, if you only had one prime lens and one zoom lens, the prime lens is going to force restrictions. And as we know, in terms of art, when you have forced restrictions or limitations, it forces you to be more creative and think outside the box. So for example, let's say you only have a 24mm prime. If you're doing an entire video shoot or an entire photo shoot with just a 24mm prime, you're gonna have to start getting pretty creative because that's a pretty wide focal length. So you're gonna have to figure out, how do I do portrait-like shots with such a wide angle? You're gonna have to get into things like environmental portraits. Versus having a zoom lens, if you only had one, you'd have a variety of focal lengths to pick from, whether it's wide to get those wide sweeping shots of the event location or venue, or the narrow end so you can get portrait-like shots, close-ups, tight shots. But what's important here is you have to remember, lenses are tools, cameras are tools, and those are tools that are used to craft the final product. If you know what you're looking for, both will serve you well. So let's use an example like a wedding. Weddings are a one-time thing, so you don't want to be caught out without the right piece of gear at the right time. So when you have, let's say, a 70-200 zoom, you could punch in real close to get maybe a tear falling. You could punch back out to maybe get them kissing so you can get more of the field of view. But then let's say I'm doing a short film. I would probably prefer to use prime lenses because I have as much time, hopefully, as I want to work on the project. So then you might ask, well, if you have a zoom that's more versatile, why not just use that instead of a prime always? Well, that moves us to our second criteria, a larger aperture and arguably a better image quality versus a range of focal lengths to be able to immediately draw upon. Disregarding a very select number of zooms, say from Sigma, zoom lenses typically don't go any faster than f2.8. And if you need a shallower depth of field, you'll only be able to achieve that with something faster like an f1.8 or an f1.4, such as this Sony 85mm 1.4G master lens. So this will offer you a wider aperture, which means one, you can get a shallower depth of field, and two, you can get better low light shots because you're letting more light into the camera. Also, it's argued that prime lenses have better image quality, and that's due to the fact that inside the lens there's less moving pieces, which means it's built for a very specific purpose. Less light bouncing around inside means clearer photos and videos, more contrast, sharper images, etc. But if I'm, say, traveling, maybe I want just one lens to carry around with me all day. Maybe I don't want to bring a camera bag with me, because you could just go around with a strap, your camera, and say a 24-7mm lens. That's not crazy. I've done that, and I still do that a lot whenever I travel because of the convenience, because of the versatility, because you have a range of focal lengths. Finally, the third criteria, which to some is very important, to others it's a side thought, but most prime lenses, because it only has one focal length, are built more compact and lighter weight than their zoom equivalences. Which means if you have a smaller setup, that makes gimbal work easier, it makes traveling with compact lenses easier, plus it reduces photographer fatigue. If you're having like an 8-hour event, you don't have to lug around a 70-200 all day long. Now on the flip side, a zoom lens like a 24-70, 70-200, those are obviously, you have many focal lengths in one. You could potentially just pack one and at most two lenses for most shoots or travel plans. That means you get to bring less gear with you and focus more on photography and videography. Ultimately, if you're asking the question, should I get a prime or a zoom lens? Which one's better? You might be asking this because it's your first, second, or third lens. It's very new to your collection. And that's why I'd ask you, why are you getting this lens? Is it for jobs? Is it for, let's say, wedding photography? If you're getting it for wedding photography, I'd recommend a zoom lens because it's gonna be more versatile while you're on the job. It's gonna get the job done. Remember, it's a tool in your tool belt. However, if you're more of a creative photographer, or let's say you do only portrait shoots, if you do only portrait shoots, I would recommend something like an 85 or a 135, but have a really wide aperture like 1.4 or 1.8. That way you can get really creative and unique looks from your shots. Personally, for me, when it comes to documentary style jobs, when it comes to recording events and taking photos of things that just happen once, things that require very fast reaction, I like to shoot with zooms. It just gives me the comfort knowing that I don't need to run to my camera bag to swap out the lens and possibly miss a moment. Now, however, if I'm doing something like for YouTube or if I'm traveling, I prefer something that is forcing me to be creative, because the whole reason why I do these videos is because I enjoy making them, and therefore I like the creative process. So I like, limiting myself to, let's say, just a 24mm lens, because one, it's lighter weight, it's more compact, it's more incentivizing to bring it out with me everywhere I go, and it doesn't become cumbersome, and at the same time, it forces me to be creative. What can I do with just this one focal length? But what do you guys think about this conversation of primes versus zooms? Go ahead and drop a comment down below. Let me know why. I would love to have a conversation about this. If you like this video, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to stay up to date on whenever these videos get released. I'm trying to get these on a schedule every 1 to 2 weeks. As always, guys, see you in the next video. So thinking outside the box with, let's say, there's a bug in my face. This bug. No, go. Love bug, go away.